All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about Kirk Cousins and if he is a good fit for the Steelers if they decide to pivot if Aaron Rodgers does not sign with them. So we've been hearing a lot of different reports, obviously, and it's possible that Aaron Rodgers just decides, hey, I don't want to play. I could take the year off. I could just retire. I could wait for another injury and go to a better situation. If that's possible, there's a lot of different things that can happen. Now, I did see that Kirk Cousins could be a possibility if Rodgers does not choose the Steelers. Now, would that be a good fit? I mean, I think so. I wouldn't say it's, a perfect fit, but I do think with how Arthur Smith likes to run his offense, I think maybe, you know, that could potentially work. Now, you could also say, but here's the thing. They bring him in, that's a pocket passer. And, Steeler fans want a guy that's mobile. And Kirk Cousins is not mobile. So that's why I would say it's not a perfect fit. Because, from that perspective. But I do think, though, it could work. It's just, how is Kirk Cousins going to play another year removed from the Achilles injury? Because Kirk Cousins did get off to a decent start, and then that Saints game happened, and then everything just fell apart. And it's possible that that injury that he suffered to his throwing arm, led to, his decline of play until he was benched for Michael Penix. We'll see. I think that really affected him mentally because, you start hearing he's talking about retirement. But he is going to play somewhere. And I do think wherever he ends up, because I do think he's not going to be on the Falcons the whole year next year. He's going to end up somewhere else. And I'm going to stand by that. Because I just don't see him being the backup to Michael Penix the entire year. We talked about this already, but I just don't see that happening. He's going to go somewhere else. There are teams that need quarterbacks. Steelers are one of them. The Browns are there unless they decide to, take Shedeur Sanders, or if Cam Ward ends up going to 2 and they take Shedeur Sanders, the Titans, which I don't think is going to happen, but we'll see. You never know. There are teams out there that need QBs. And also, what, like I just said with Rodgers, if someone gets injured, they could opt to trade for Kirk Cousins or something. Unless the Falcons just flat out release Kirk Cousins. And that would benefit other teams because then they don't have to give up anything to get him. But with the Steelers, I think if the offensive line is able to hold up, I think Kirk could do well. I think Kirk could put up good numbers there. I think, look, last year was just a real turnoff because of just how his year finished. I mean, he played really poor in those games in the second half that led to his benching. So, people are not going to be optimistic with him. And then also, having him as a second quarterback on my fantasy team, yeah, it was frustrating. But I think he's still got gas left in the tank. And I think if he is healthy, he can bounce back. And the Steelers might not be a bad spot for him just because, they have good weapons there. And look, the Steelers are always in contention. And it would be a massive upgrade for them at quarterback. Like with what they have currently. I wouldn't say it'd be a massive upgrade compared to what they had last year with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, but what they have currently with Mason Rudolph, like, I think, Kirk Cousins is an upgrade there. You don't want to go into the year with Mason Rudolph as your starter. I mean, some Steelers fans are open to that. I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but some are definitely open to the idea. I know that. But we still have to see, what happens with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I don't know when he's going to make a decision. If it comes after the draft, so be it. We patiently wait. But, the Steelers, they could be a team that takes a quarterback with their first pick. Maybe they take one in the later rounds. They did meet with Jalen Milroe. Jackson Dart's a guy that could be projected to go to them with their first pick in the first round. I mean, Jalen Milroe is not going to be a first-round pick, but they could maybe take him later on. Because they need that future quarterback. Now, it might not be in this draft. That's the problem, but they need to. Quarterback is probably a position they should address in the draft, just so you have a backup plan. Because they have Mason Rudolph, and I don't know if they still have Kyle Allen, but they have Mason Rudolph. They really messed things up with how they handled the quarterbacks in the offseason. Because what they did last year was like a ripple effect, right? Because you bench Fields, and then, you pursue Fields over Russ, and then Fields ends up going to the Jets. Well, because they lowballed him. Jets gave him more money. And then Russ ended up signing with the Giants because they're pursuing Aaron Rodgers. And now Rodgers might not play, and then you're left with nothing unless Kirk Cousins comes into the picture. But look, the Steelers and the Giants are dealing with similar things. They just have failed to find that next quarterback since their guys retired. And at some point, you figure they will figure it out and they'll get this thing back on the right track. But you're just wondering, when is that going to happen? As my dog starts barking in frustration over that. Only time will tell. But this will just be the latest veteran that the Steelers bring in, if that's the case. Because even when they drafted Kenny Pickett, I mean, they signed Mitchell Trubisky, and Trubisky was not great. I mean, Rudolph you bring back because he knows the system. And look, I mean, those final 3 games in 2023, he helped propel the Steelers to the postseason. So, I mean, he's a good backup to have. But, as a starter, yeah, that doesn't get me too excited. But, I mean, look, if you have a young guy, that's one thing. He's the bridge guy. I guess you could use him as a bridge guy. That makes sense. So, we'll see. But I would be okay with Kirk going to the Steelers. I don't think that would be bad for him. I think that could be a good spot. But I would be curious to see how Steelers fans will react to that if that ended up happening. Would they be happy about it, or no different, or indifferent, I should say? We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. But it all depends on Aaron Rodgers, because the Steelers, it's just the Steelers right now. There's no other teams that we're aware of at the moment that are in on Rodgers. I mean, all the talk was Rodgers wanted to go to the Vikings, and then they basically said, we're good, we got J.J. McCarthy. He's going to be ready to go for the start of the season. He's going to be our guy moving forward. So that took them out, and then the Giants went and signed Russ because they probably figured we're not going to get Aaron Rodgers. And then that just leaves the Steelers. Steelers can end up with nobody. Maybe the Falcons really are dead set on keeping Kirk Cousins. Who knows? But I do believe that he is going to end up elsewhere. I really do believe that. Because I don't think he wants to be. He doesn't. I don't think. I know he doesn't want to be a backup. He wants to start. Now, if he goes to another team and he doesn't play well, that could spell maybe the end of him. But, I think for right now, I'm giving him that chance to, he goes somewhere else, and I think he'll play well. Because we saw that. Look, he didn't throw 500 yards in a game last year by accident. I know it was against the Bucs. The Bucs defense is not great, but still, he threw for 500 yards. It's not easy to do in a game, and he did it. So he still got it. It's just he struggled. Got hurt against the Saints, coming off a major injury, and he had a lot of bad games, especially against those AFC West teams, against the Chargers, against the Broncos. It was not good. It was not good. So let's see where he could potentially end up. Now, you always hear the Browns because of Kevin Stefanski, the connection there. But Steelers could come into the picture if things don't go their way with Rodgers. But let me know what you guys think, though. Is Kirk Cousins a good fit for the Steelers? How would you feel about that? Let me know in the comments. So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we're going to talk some baseball. We're going to talk about the Dodgers and their series against the Tigers over the weekend, and why it's going to be tough to beat them. It really is. And we will get into that when we come back from our next break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.